Welcome back to the MDM podcast. I'm Vesa Brajkovic, MDM's senior editor at NAW and the host for today's episode. Distribution is an $8 trillion industry, and for most of that history, it has somehow managed, despite its scale, to operate pretty quietly behind the scenes. Relationships, of course, were built in person, and reputations were built over decades. And now, marketing is simply changing and evolving. Today's buyers research suppliers before they ever pick up the phone. And we've also heard that today's workforces choose employers based on what they see online. And of course, the conversation always goes to AI. AI is reshaping how both of those audiences find the companies they work with. My guest today has spent the last few years building a social media presence for IPS packaging and automation. It's one that doesn't look like a lot of others we see in the industry. Really, it's built on a simple belief that every distribution company already has a compelling story. They just have to find a way to tell it. Kevin Kegley is joining us today from IPS Packaging. It's a family-owned, veteran-owned business based in Greenville, South Carolina, 50 years in the industry, a nationwide footprint in packaging supplies, equipment, and automation. Today, he's giving us a taste of the conversation he'll be presenting at NAW's Shift Conference, presented by MDM, in Denver in May. We hope to see you there. But for now, Kevin, welcome to the MDM podcast.
Thank you, Vesna. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I would love for you to kind of think back to when you first walked into IPS and you started to think, okay, how am I going to build a brand presence? What were you trying to convey before you even made the first piece of content?
That is a great question. And I remember arriving on the shores of IPS in October of 2022. And I had never in my life worked for an organization of that size. So immediately I'm thinking, I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone's names. This place is giant. I'm in an office. There's a warehouse out back. What do I do? And so after about an hour or two of kind of freaking out a little bit, I landed on just do what you always do, which is just try to find a story somewhere. So I grabbed the camera that we had available at the time, which wasn't the best, but I used what I had. And so I started walking around and almost like a reporter, just looking for a story.
Yeah.
And I wandered out into the warehouse and I noticed a guy. At the time, I didn't know his name, but his name is David. He's been with us for over 20 years, but he keeps all of our facilities in shape, in order. He cleans the floors. He's in the warehouses all the time, just making sure that the concrete floors shine. So I'm walking around and he's down at the end of this aisle with his polishing machine. And I'm just watching him for a minute. And I notice he stops and he bends down and with his fingernail, he scrapes something up and he picks it up and puts it in the trash and keeps going. And I was like, that was probably a dime-sized piece of who knows what in this enormous warehouse. Yet in that moment, David saw that. And I thought, man, the details matter. Wait, the details matter. And so that was the very first video I did. And I think everyone was blown away at IPS because it was their story and they didn't know it. The details matter at IPS, and that is what is a differentiator. And it started just by looking for a story. And it was right there in front of me in the warehouse with David, who was just cleaning. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't about stretch film. It wasn't about bubble wrap. It wasn't tape. It was a guy. It was a man that has worked with us for years.
And this is such a micro moment in his day that he probably didn't even realize that he did. And it tells so much about the company as a whole. And like you said, this tiny moment in this giant warehouse. And it shows so much, this respect for your company and, having that brand presence like we're talking about, in every day. So I love that.
That was the beginning of it. And it's grown since then. And I put in, I think within the first week, I put in a budget or a request for like over 10 grand. Like, hey, we need this. I've been doing this for a long time. Can we get these things? And I think that first piece of content was like, yeah, I think this guy might have a vision for where we can go. So it was approved, thankfully.
And I'm sure the engagement on it too showed a lot. It's like, okay, wait, maybe there's something to this.
It did. And I think we did get engagement, but what really blew me away, and I think this is why I do this, why I tell stories, because it connects with people. I got so much feedback from my colleagues. Like they came up and they're like, man, that was great. That gave me goosebumps. And it's like, well, it's your story. And I think that by telling a good story, by capturing that moment, everybody sat up a little higher in their chair and they're like, you know what, details do matter, and I'm a part of that. I am aware of the details, and that's the kind of service that I can offer my customer. So I think, not only when you tell a story does it resonate with people, but the people that are a part of that story, it kind of boosts them up a little bit, builds morale.
Totally. It's all part of that culture piece too. It's a little bit of marketing, a little bit of culture, kind of building the whole company as a whole.
A lot of heart too.
Yeah. I think a lot of distribution executives I've spoken to in the field, and they might be listening to this saying, okay, we're not a consumer brand. We're not flashy. We sell industrial packaging, or we sell safety equipment, or we sell fasteners. Who
Mhm.
wants to scroll through a video about, just this day to day? Where are they getting wrong? What are they getting wrong when they have that frame of mind?
Well, I would say, first of all, that that frame of mind is exactly right. No one wakes up saying, man, I really want to look into a video about fasteners today. Unlikely. There might be one or two out there. People are, across the spectrum, but typically the average human isn't waking up thinking about that. In fact, they're probably not thinking about much at all. But I think as humans, we're always looking for connection. And I think that's what stories do. So to that executive that thinks, well, we sell widgets, or why would anyone care about our fasteners or whatever? They probably don't. However, chances are you have a story. There could be someone that is packaging those fasteners, or someone along the line, somewhere in your warehouse, somewhere in your office, that has a story that you could then sort of tie into a fastener. The fastener, that's a background character. Like, the main character is this person that has a story, to tell. And it could be it's their first day. It could be they've been there for 30 years. That's a story to tell. And that's something that can be captured very simply. I know that I said when I got to IPS, we had an older camera that wasn't the best, and I put in a request. But I've been doing it for a long time, so I know what tools I can use and what I can grow with. But it doesn't have to be expensive. Chances are people have a phone, and this phone probably has a camera on it. So you can just pick up your phone, capture 5 seconds of this person doing what they do, packaging the fasteners. You could talk to them for 10 seconds, 20 seconds. You could take a photo. Regardless, it's not about the fasteners. It's about that person. It's about that story that can be told. And anybody can do that.
And I think we're seeing more and more the power that brand presence has, not just for the company as a whole, but also, attracting that next workforce that's coming in, and really looking at websites and looking at people's social media presence, whether we like it or not, or we think so or not. I think that is what's happening. And so that's another piece too. Can they see themselves at your company? Do they understand what you do?
That's exactly right. Not only when you tell these stories are you hopefully capturing the attention of a potential customer or partner, but you're also capturing the attention of top talent. I have the privilege of onboarding our new folks that come in, and I always ask them, what was your first encounter with IPS? And they talk about LinkedIn, they talk about YouTube. And thankfully, we're there, and we're thinking of those things. And they have said this place looks like a great place to work. Now, would we have won them over by showing them stretch film? Maybe not. But if we show them stories of how my CEO Derek was in a film with Mel Gibson, we were soldiers. They see
Wow,
him wearing
really?
he really was. You can check it out. It's pretty funny. But we can go into detail about that later. But if you show people around the office just enjoying themselves, smiling, making making a video with their colleagues, just having fun, they can see themselves there, because everybody's got to work to some degree. Everybody's got to make a living somehow. So if they can do it somewhere where they might actually enjoy themselves, that's pretty attractive.
I want to talk about the piece too, that in the same way that Google search, as we all know, changed how customers find and choose their suppliers and their distributors, I think so will AI. And we've talked about this a little bit offline, but how do you believe that the marketing landscape is impacting that brand storytelling? I'm just wondering, is brand storytelling more urgent now than it has ever been, really?
I would think so. I think being human is going to be priceless going forward, because you've probably seen it, a spectrum of good AI and AI slop. Some people think, well, I'm using AI. That does not mean it's going to be a banger. It could blow up in your face. You could actually repel people. But what will never fail are people and stories. And telling that story is going to build your brand. It's not necessarily telling your brand. Your story is going to help build the brand. You have to keep that in mind. So it's like, what story do we want to tell? Again, going back to the fasteners, you're not going to lead with fasteners. It's like, for instance, IPS, it's a veteran-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned company. It's a family-owned company. We're celebrating 50 years this year, so that's a story to tell. That says trust. That says people that have showed up in the worst of times, and those are the moments and the stories that I glean from. I capture those moments because not everyone was in the military, not everyone has been there for 50 years, but the people make up this organization that has been around for 50 years, and so that's the brand. That is the brand that we're building.
And for a distribution executive listening to this who, maybe they're convinced, they're like, okay, but I generally don't know where to start and where to begin. Maybe they don't have a dedicated team yet, or they don't have the budget for it, or maybe they do. What's the first thing that you would tell them to do?
Much like my first day at IPS, it felt overwhelming. I didn't know anyone, didn't know where to begin, but what I settled on was there's a story somewhere, so I went out to find it. So again, we've established that typically everyone has a tool in their phone. They can capture photos, they can capture video. Just just go out and do something different and listen. Go to the break area, go to the place where people congregate, hang out in the warehouse, maybe ride along with a driver. It's not going to cost you anything but a few moments or a day of your time. And that's valuable, I know. But if you take the moment to begin to listen and hear the stories that are all around you, there'll be too many stories to capture. Then it will be, well, which one do I grab and which one do I want to tell as I'm building the brand of our organization?
Amazing. Any final thoughts you would love to share with our listeners?
I just think that since the beginning of time, everyone is connected with story. And as we sat around campfires, we shared stories. How'd the hunt go? It was terrible. Everybody laughs because they've been there. So we all crave connections. We all want to relate as human beings. And the quicker you can get to that, where you forget about products, because I know I've had those conversations. It's like, well, we don't have enough product that's on LinkedIn. And that's for a reason. I would say, just in general terms, out of the 10 times that I'm posting something where I want to engage with people, maybe one of them might be about a product. The rest of that is telling story where people begin to understand who you are. They relate to you. They trust you. They like your story. So that one time when you're like, we sell fasteners, they're like, count me in. So find your story, tell it, and get some fans because they'll be there.
Love that, Kevin. This has been a great conversation. I have a feeling that the folks in your shift session in Denver are going to walk away with a lot more inspiration, but also maybe some concrete tactics and strategies for maybe how to implement storytelling into their company strategy. So thank you so much for joining us on the MDM podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vesna.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the MDM podcast. Thank you to Kevin Kegley of IPS for joining us and for reminding us that the story was always there, is always there. Sometimes you just have to walk into the warehouse to find it. If you want to hear more from Kevin and get into the tactics behind everything that we've discussed today, he'll be presenting The Power of Storytelling at NAW's Shift Conference to be held in Denver on May 13th. We'll have a link to register in the show notes. Once again, I'm Vesna Brajkovic. Thank you for listening to the MDM podcast.